I do have a question, but it's not specifically for the VSBA. It's since we are two entities, the WSESD and the Southeast Supervisory Union, if the first one votes not to allocate the funds, how does that work? I mean, how can the
Well, I thought the vote had to
WSESU
come from the SU. So the way I would look at it, the SD has taken a vote, which to me is advisory for the SU, is the way I would possibly see it, but we're going to have to vote. I think the SU has to be the body that takes the vote. So I'm going to need to now go back to Vernon, I would think, and get their advisory opinion as well. And then I would believe the five of us would be taking a vote.
I'm going to suggest that perhaps it is worth waiting until after our next WSESD meeting.
Okay. Which is when?
Wednesday after.
You guys are meeting Wednesday the 4th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which means if we met Monday, because, we can, have a vote of rescission or something, but I think it's very hard for representatives from the WSESD to vote against the vote of the membership. I don't know. I mean, this is sort of uncharted. We've always kind of done what was the advice of our boards. That was our practice. This is new territory.
This is. We're going to have to walk through this carefully.
There's so much new territory for us. Isn't this fun? So I don't know how things have happened in other districts, but I, as a representative to the WSSU, would bring something to my board, and my board would say, vote this way, and I would vote that way. And so this would be a departure. If we're going to make this decision, we could make that decision, but...
So if you're meeting on Wednesday the 4th, our next meeting after that is the 15th, am I correct, Frank? No.
16th.
I might have the 16th, sorry.
Yeah, right.
16th. So we could have this on the agenda for the 16th. That would also give me time, and Vernon is having a very small meeting on Tuesday. Actually, we're not meeting till Tuesday the 3rd.
Oh.
So that would not make it work for us to take a position next Monday. So if I talk to Vernon on Tuesday the 3rd, you talk to the SD on Wednesday the 4th, and then our next
Meeting on the 11th.
Oh, we have a budget meeting on the 11th?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
For the SU.
So we
have
could,
one on the 11th too.
we could do it on the 11th. Yeah. Get your Christmas shopping done now, people. You will be busy in December. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I guess in my mind, and I'm wondering if in other people's mind, I'm trying to get a sense of, there's this amount that is paid for, would be paid for by the district. And it seems to me that a lot of the work, certainly not all of the work, but a really core piece of the work is advocacy in Montpelier for the school boards, representing the interests of the school boards. Could you talk a little bit more about what that entails? I mean, I'm thinking, oh, Washington lobbyist, but I don't know. What is that work?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Sue Siglowski. I'm the executive director of the VSBA, but prior to that, I was the director of legal and policy services. So what I was doing in my previous role was really sitting in on committee meetings in Montpelier and learning about what was happening with various bills and the effects that they would have, and then writing a very comprehensive legislative report that then goes out to all the school board members in the state, alerting them to issues that might affect their districts. So that is a very large part of what we do. The other portion of it is guided by our the VSBA's resolutions. So there is a resolution process for members, and the resolutions are voted on by the full membership at our fall meeting, and those resolutions are really what guides the the legislative efforts for the organization. If there's something that comes up in the legislature that isn't addressed by one of the resolutions, then it is brought to the VSBA board and they discuss it and decide what their approach is going to be.
So, and I'm sorry if it's already in here, I just haven't had a chance to look at this. So we're talking at least a full-time equivalent, at least one person full-time doing that work, probably more, question?
Yes, I would say one person full-time. We share a legislative analyst with some other educational associations to help cover the different committees. And then the executive director does spend some time in the State House as well.
So given the number of...
Carrie, point of order, we're 20 minutes into a 10-minute presentation, we've got a really long agenda.
Yeah.
I'd like us to wrap, you can maybe consult with them personally or separately. Thanks, Paul.
Sure, can I finish my question?
Yeah, why don't we
I really
finish?
didn't, 'cause
Well, why don't we
we're
do one
double
more
the time that
question
we're
and
gonna
then try and wrap it up
Okay.
if there aren't other questions to ask?
It seems to me that this goes to the heart of the question, is how much work gets done by a representative organization, and I just want to sort of tease that out a little bit. I can stop questioning. I just want to be clear, that's my objective.
So do you want a quick wrap up?
I'm not quite clear what the last question, how much work gets done? Is
Well,
that your question?
just sort of, we're talking people
Okay.
that have to be
Yeah.
hired
Yeah.
to do this work.
Right. Yeah, so I think,
Four people.
well, there's 4 people that work for the organization, not all of them are in the State House, but yes, there's 4 people total that work for the organization.
So any other board member questions? Okay. So I think our plan is you will go back to SD, I will go back to Vernon. We will regroup on either the 11th, if it can fit on the agenda then, or no later than the 16th.
No,
The 16th is not a, oh, that's a Vernon, I'm sorry, that's what I was.
11 is
Sorry,
a-
the 11th, just the
That's
11th.
a budget meeting on the 11th
We have a budget meeting on the 11th.
at 5:30?
I don't believe we've set a
6 o'clock?
time yet, but it would be,
Because I didn't have it.
yeah, nope. It's only on the draft timeline right now, is where we're at.
I mean, we were thinking just for the SD board.
We
And-
emailed it.
We emailed it to Carrie and Lyle, but I can email it to
Did you
others.
share?
I shared it
Oh,
to the SU
She
board.
shared it with the SU
I
board.
can send it to you.
Yeah. But if between now and the 11th, preferably prior to, if any board members have questions, let me know and I will be happy to go back and forth with Sue or whoever to get answers. Sound good? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the time.
Felt it was important.
So, we have some other visitors, principals.
Oh, okay.
Part of the reason they're here is probably the
Then,
superintendent's search.
which we should do next.
However, there was also discussion at the last WSESU meeting about cutting all dues and fees. And
The SD meeting.
SU, I'm pretty sure it was at the SU meeting.
I don't
That was
remember
the SD meeting.
I don't remember the SU cutting
Dues and fees?
dues and fees.
I raised a question about I think it was your office, this 14,000 or 16,000 that's in the budget.
Well, they want.
Thank you all. Thank you, good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, let me get the minutes.
I think that was part of this discussion at the SD level.
Okay, I thought it was at the SU meeting when we
The 14,
last month.
it was at this meeting at
Okay.
Vernon. Yeah, the $14,000 in the 8110 line dues and fees, asked for a breakdown of the costs
Oh,
in
okay.
that line, and also whether we should consider purchasing Superintendent Association services à la carte, depending on what the dues were and what services we anticipate needing.
Okay. I guess I did not take that as David saying, let's cut everything.
I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, I
wanna know
took
what
it
they
as
are.
what is this? We need more info.
Okay, well, we have lots more info.
Okay. So why don't we go to the second item that we've added to the agenda. Christina started minutes for you. So we have a letter I am looking for approval to sign to Secretary French. I can read it to you. In accordance with Rule 3232.2 of the Vermont State Board of Education Manual of Rules and Practices and 16 VSA 241, I write to notify you that effective June 30th, 2020, Lyle S. Holliday, Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union Superintendent of Schools, will retire from this position. As we proceed with the search for Lyle's replacement, we look forward to guidance from the Agency of Education with the requirements of this search. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Carrie O. Amadon, Chair, WSESU. So apparently this is sort of step one in the process.
So if we don't send this in, can we keep live?
So if it gets lost in the mail is what you are advocating? Incorrect postage?
Assuming not, I move that we authorize Carrie Amadon to sign the letter to Secretary French notifying him of Lyle's retirement.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, I will sign it and get it in the mail with the incorrect postage.
At this point, should we just assume I'm Tim?
Tim is home with sick and crying children.
Oh.
So we'll assume I'm
So
Tim.
you can be.
You can, do you need, or,
Nope, that was
no,
just-
okay, okay.
They were sick and crying when
so-
I left.
While we're on this superintendent search, can maybe Christina or someone bring us up to date on what happened at the SD? Maybe not.
Boy. Anybody else want to kind of phone a friend?
What
on
happened
this?
at our board meeting?
About Lyle, we talked about putting together, oh, I remember now.
Yeah.
We had two, sorry, I got to flip to another part of the tape in my head. We had two people volunteer to serve on a committee.
Okay.
Three, because you did.
I volunteered as well, yeah. It's two
Did
other
you
people.
actually, or did he put it in the
No, I
notes?
said
She did it on her own.
I said I'll help along too
Okay.
if need be. So it was Emily Murphy-Cowher and David Scholes and myself all signed on to
Okay.
assist with that.
Okay,
And that was pretty much as far as we got because it's an SU-led activity, so we were
Right.
I was just looking for bodies.
gotcha. So we
to
have
get
at least 3 bodies.
And then I was also contacted by the chair of the teachers union. And the teachers union is interested in meeting, well, they asked to meet with me, but that's not really, I think it'd be better to meet with the committee and how teachers can be involved in the process.
Okay.
And the chair, Scott Noren, had floated the Thursday after Thanksgiving, I think that's the 5th, as a possible meeting time
Okay.
after school. And so if we can put together some folks and try to get input from various stakeholders.
Thursday the 5th? Okay.
Is that meeting, is that 7 now, the time of that meeting? Because I haven't heard yet.
I have not confirmed because I wanted to find out if, because I realized I was moving forward as if it was a district thing and it's really an SU thing. And so I hit the brakes on that since we were meeting here tonight.
We can have the discussion. So
Forgot what hat I was wearing.
procedure-wise, we as an SU, can we have a committee that includes non-SU members? But how do we?
Yes, we have to be able to.
We have, right, there's, yeah, I mean, otherwise we all would, yeah,
Quit.
yeah. So I guess then the question is, do we establish a superintendent search committee tonight? Or an exploratory committee?
Yes.
I like exploratory
Yeah,
committee.
Process committee.
Process committee, I like that. So it is not necessarily the long-term committee, but it is a committee that would kick things off. Basically next Thursday.
To explore what we
To
need to do.
explore what we
Yes.
could do, what our options are, and they would be charged with reporting back to the SU so that the SU can make the decision how to move forward. I like that. I like exploratory committee.
Yep.
So I would also be willing to serve if that helps.
How about I move the SU board creates an exploratory superintendent search committee.
That is good. And are we naming names?
So I'm naming my name, David's name, and
you just joined.
Emily's.
And Emily, yeah.
And I will volunteer myself as well.
There's anybody else from Vernon that wants to join?
And it's called,
I can ask.
It's called the
Well, I'm trying to think of an acronym, but SECS
the
does not work.
Superintendent Search Exploratory Committee.
Superintendent
SSEC.
Search
SEC?
Exploratory Committee. Yeah.
Sure.
The
Superintendent
search
Search Explorer.
exploratory
sorry.
committee.
Are you good with acronyms?
Hi, I'm Julie. I would like to request that an administrator from the group be allowed to join that committee as well.
There certainly will be. We're gonna just kind of figure out all the things that have to be done first and then invite people.
Well, I was talking about this committee you're naming to now.
Yeah, I think it's board work at this point, just to get it
Yeah,
squared
well,
away.
and I guess that's where I'm trying to wrap my head around this also. I don't want this committee of 4 to be it. Like, this to me is literally a committee that I think will exist for about 2 weeks
Yeah,
while we wrap our heads around what's a possibility
What needs
for
to be
going forward. I'm glad that David's on it, because I would love to pick your brain on how you guys did the town manager search.
and human
'Cause
rights, and human resources, and sustainability.
Just because I feel like searches like that were very wide, they were very open, they were very transparent. I felt like they had a town component, and I mean that in a town employee component, but at the same time, they had a community
Yeah.
component.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure we get both, that we've got school employees getting involved, but I also want to make sure we've got community members.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the school's such an integral part of the community, that
yeah, clearly.
if you do one without the other,
And I think the model that we've used to hire principals all along is exactly that. I think the
Okay.
school would be very similar. I think there's just, I didn't even know you had to write to the secretary and find out what they require. I didn't know they had requirements. But there are questions, there are questions about how do you do a search,
Yeah.
how extensive a search, and but I think the process is like Lyle's, you volunteered,
I
you
sent
know.
I sent that process to you.
Yeah.
so
I should
I,
have sent it to you.
if you can,
I
that'd be
just
great.
never-
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, because it's a committee of the board, the meetings will be warned, the
Yeah.
public can be heard, so.
Yes.
I think it's, perhaps the way to do is for this 2-week committee, I mean, they're warned meetings, people can attend. So, if people want to come and give input, they're public meetings, they can
Absolutely.
give input. So
Right.
that-
Right,
That's
but
the
I
deal.
do see this as being a very short-term committee as we move to a longer-term, broader, very clearly defined, open, transparent process. So we have a motion, I believe.
What is it?
That we convene a superintendent search exploratory committee, sorry. I had process committee, whatever.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Questions? Okay, so all those in favor? Aye?
Aye?
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Now, can I clarify what's going to happen on December 5th, Thursday, after December 5th? You were going to...
So Carrie,
Yes,
or I can do it,
you can do it.
try to set up a meeting that was requested by the chair of the teachers union with the committee.
But that is
Okay.
something that we could also, well, it will be warned.
Right.
Is there any reason not to really put it out there in public as we possibly can, so that anybody who wanted to show up could?
I think absolutely, and we should have plenty of room, because I think there'll be a lot of interest.
So can we do it at
You tell me where I can rent Cusick, I can, I can rent Cusick.
So I just want to make sure that we're keeping, because Scott has to leave at 4:30. So I
Okay.
just want to make sure that we get that.
His part done.
His part
Absolutely.
done.
We could start there.
Okay.
But then I feel like if we could, maybe you and I can talk about an agenda,
Okay.
just seeing what we're looking to cover then.
Sounds good. Yeah, heck of a week. Should be really rollicking by Wednesday night.
I'll be at a negotiation session that evening.
On Thursday?
As will Frank,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
We won't be there.
okay. Do we have a time? Sorry. I know you said he has to leave by 4:30,
So we were
but,
shooting for like 3:30.
okay. I think I can do that, or I can make it happen.
Okay, we can.
Are you,
She had said she couldn't at 3:30, but I'm not sure. She can't, she has to be done at a certain time.
That's right, she has to be done, I think.
But we
it's
still have a
either
committee.
5:30.
we still have a committee, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, can we Skype her in? Can we call her
Yeah,
in?
Thursday
Something
was
like,
the-
I mean.
teaching.
Thursday was
Oh,
the
okay.
better, Thursday was the better of the 2 days that we had talked about it for her anyway.
Let's try. I think we've got
Yeah,
to
no, let's
kick,
go for it.
we
Let's
got to
go.
kick
Yeah,
it
yeah,
off
yeah.
and we got to
She
start
comes-
getting
yeah.
input and go from there.
And
Okay.
Are we still allowed to ask questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Hi.
You always are.
I know. I'm trying to follow along here. So there was a request for a meeting by the teachers.
The
So-
chair of the teachers union.
Correct. So that's gonna happen next Thursday, but that's also gonna be a warned meeting?
Yeah, so I believe what we're saying is we have now established an exploratory committee.
Got that.
Just because
Yep.
we now know we have to move forward with a search. So to kick it off, let's get a couple people in a room from our board. We've already had someone approach someone about talking with a group. So we might as well invite him in. But I think this is also just a good time to open it up and
Gotcha.
say, look, the four of us are trying to figure out a process. That process would then come, or options for processes, they would then come back to this board and we'll figure out how to officially move forward with the true process. But right now, I think we're talking brainstorming, I think we're talking what worked here, what didn't work here, and
So say a group of administrators
Yep.
wanted to have a similar meeting, then we would request that from this exploratory.
either that or come to this one next Thursday.
Right.
Because this one to me is just,
Gonna be everywhere.
it's gonna be, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you
This
for
is
clarifying.
all new territory, at least for
Yeah.
many of us who have never been through anything like this. So before we actually establish the committee that will move forward, I think we need to figure out what that committee would look like, what should it look like,
Yeah.
what do people want it to look like?
Well, that's,
So,
thank you.
any other questions? All right, so we will I can email, or you and I can talk, then I will email Barb some possible,
I just asked her to check on availability of Cusick, so she'll
okay,
be on that.
okay, just, I mean, Cusick is,
If she can't, if it's booked already, then
Okay.
we'll just have to find spaces.
okay. All right,
And who's gonna contact the Vermont NEA to invite them specifically?
I've been having the conversations.
okay, so
Finish
Christina
that.
will be on that, okay. And then I guess the only other thing we could do is just really get it out to, where are we now? Press, and see if, just get in the papers as a PSA kind of thing. So, I can do that,
I think Barb's probably on.
on that as well.
If it's
Yeah.
a warned meeting.
If it's a warm
then we'll go
meeting,
to-
but, okay.
But
It,
probably should get done sooner versus later.
Yes,
with the-
yes.
With the holiday schedule.
Right.
She might
So I
not be
think-
working Thanksgiving
have-
Day.
Right, she'd have to do it tomorrow
okay,
morning.
so as long as we know where it is, let's do it. Okay. All right, so I think that takes care of the two things that were not on our agenda. Now we get to move to our agenda. Budget. What do you got for us, Frank?
Alrighty, here we go. Our allocation methodology discussion. Here's some document copies we can send around. Oh, you have one of those? No, we got plenty to share.
One page?
Yeah, we got plenty. If we want to send them down there.
I could actually read this. You guys have enough back there?
Got plenty.
And feel free to sit at the table. Yeah, I was like, come on. Okay, so what do you got?
Alrighty,
What do you want
so
us to know?
it's not essential, but it's nice if you brought your
Last
documents
thing.
we gave you last SU board meeting as just a quick point of reference, and jump into moving forward.
Was yours the one with draft on it?
There's that, and then I see this one right here, so I gave you the prior year
Yeah, okay.
to show you where, if we stay with the convention, where we would end up, and by the 11th. So, just a context for the allocation methodology. So here's a summary of the administration and supportive instruction, the transportation, special education services, the grant programs, and the food services. So last meeting, we looked at the detailed proposals for administration, supportive instruction, the grant programs, and the food programs. Next Monday, we're scheduled to talk about special ed. And as you can see again, that's a substantial portion of the proposed budget. And that's where the allocation methodology has the greatest impact. So there's that context. And then just as to wrap the timeline up, we're shooting for December 11th as the vote on the entire budget for the SU. It's a week later than the prior year, but it's timely so that as we go into the SD planning, we've got those major assumptions in good shape, along with Vernon. So the other point of reference is this second page on the documents that we looked at last meeting. This is what we're revising. So we are revisiting an allocation methodology that's been in place for about 4 years, and it took a while to get to this standard.
Why?
Why are we doing that? And the main reason why is because of the re-governance of our structures. The SU still exists as it always has. So it's the one entity aside from Vernon that is essentially comparable data from FY20, this current fiscal year, to next year. But the way in which the SU interacts with the districts is quite different, because we went from 5 districts to 1 district in the Wyndham Southeast School District. And then the other issue, and the main issue, is because Vernon changed their status from a member town of the SU at K through 12 to a member town of the SU K6, and then you're organized just the same way Dover and Wardsboro are organized in the SU to the north of us. Vernon chose to be a tuition town. There's a lot of similar sort of structures where you have a supervisory union, you have a union school district, and then you have a district that operates a school K through 6 and then tuition 7 through 12. When you decide to be a tuition town, you are now subject to the tuition state laws. And again, that's what informs the allocation procedure. So we can talk about options, any questions you might have, but here is an outline of what is consistent with the statutes and would be manageable in terms of implementing as well. So if I could take a few minutes to go through this, most of this is not different than what you're accustomed to. And just in terms of at a glance, looking at this document we've been living by for 4 years, and this document, the main difference is that we're now separating the way in which we assess secondary costs. And it's because, again, we're not all the same anymore. We used to be all the same, but we're not the same anymore. In terms of the way the state looks at the relationship between a tuition town and a union member district. Okay, so the first function to allocate, again, I come back to this document, the four areas: administration, sports instruction, special ed, grants, and so on. Administration, no change. Okay, that's the straightforward. Vernon is a member of the supervisory union as it relates to engaging for financial services, superintendent services, and ESL, English language learner, ELL. So just as a reminder, we look at all enrollment, K through 12, and then we just do that simple calculation of the proportion. What is Vernon as a proportion of total? What is Dummerston? But in this case now, the change, now going back to this page that I handed out last meeting, as far as a point of reference, the difference here is that the total impact is the same in terms of administration and supportive instruction. It's just that we no longer look at, well, what is Putney, Dummerston, Guilford, and Brattleboro Town separately. They're now one. And Vernon is another one entity. And we just look at K-12 enrollment, and then what is the proportion that Vernon is of K-12 enrollment? This current period is 7.1%. And the rest of the members are the 93%. Okay. So no change in that methodology. It's just that when we actually administer the mechanics of an assessment, it won't go to a Putney School District. Obviously, it will just go to Wyndham Southeast School District. 93% of those costs. 7%, depending on how our enrollments come out, it's likely to be similar. It's also a 2-year average.
Frank, just a quick clarification, the Brattleboro UHS at the bottom of that first section is 42.2%. Is there a place where that is broken down by town? Or was I typing when you said that? No, there's not. That's just, so how does that get assessed? Oh, it doesn't anymore.
No.
Duh. That changed.
It did, yeah. But it's a good point of reference in that, just in terms of numbers, it's nice to kind of put things in perspective. 2,287 kids, K through 12, and Vernon is 162. Well, 162 plus 158 in the prior year, taking a 2-year average is a 7%. The high school was 969 kids out of 2287. That's 42%. So on. Okay, so that's our kind of the broadest. We're all in together. Allocation methodology. The second one, special education, school age. So school age is a big qualifier as opposed to preschool. So school age is, now we're talking service, and then now we got to group things. It can't be just K-12. Now we have to group. Okay, what are we all alike in? Well, we're all alike in special ed services K through 6, and if you're Dummerston, it's in that site it's K through 8, and same with Putney, K through 8. So when you look at essentially elementary education and the way in which we provide those services at the sites, knowing the SU employees and contracts for all special ed services, again, we are all the same. So it's a simple allocation. The only difference in this allocation between the FY21 budget and the current prior 4 years is that we were looking at K-12 proportions, but now we've got to look at just the K-6, K-8 portion because we've got to isolate costs at the secondary level and treat Vernon the way they want to be treated, which is as a tuition town. So we wouldn't want to mix up K-12 enrollment statistics with costs that are going to be allocated over a K-6 basis. So essentially on the K-6 level, no change. It's still proportion. All right, so now the one that responds to Vernon's choice to be a tuition town, that basically says on the secondary level, just like Dover and Marlboro, we have to isolate costs at UHS and essentially turn those into what's called the excess cost charge. It's a reimbursement to the district. We have to do that now for Vernon. So how do we do that? I've got 4 steps. Keep in mind we're talking about BAMs, 7 and 8, and the high school 9 through 12, and about 120 Vernon students attend. And of those 120, and the number is going to vary, but approximately 26 are students that are in this group, students with IEP services. So the first step is to do what I just said, which is look at student enrollment at the high school and then identify the proportion of students at each site, or in this case, a resident, right? So how many kids are from Dover, how many kids are from Marlboro, how many are from Vernon, and then everybody else is together, right? Everybody else meaning Dummerston, Guilford, Putney, and Brattleboro, okay? Step 2 is just do the calculation. Okay, what's the proportion? Okay, so I don't have definitive numbers. Where the census data collection is happening right now. November 1st is come and gone, but that data goes to the Agency of Ed. They say, well, who else has claimed these students? Mm-hmm. And then they have a vetting process that says, well, so-and-so also claimed Johnny or Susie. And then they send the data back and says, okay, this is resolved. You get, your student FTE has been essentially verified. And that's when I take the data forward into this allocation methodology. So step 3 is essentially identifying the costs that should be shared. Okay, so in very round numbers, the BUHS services employed here at the SU, but are delivered at the high school, are about $5 million. $5 million in special education services employed here, but delivered in the BUHS building or delivered to students that are affiliated with BUHS. Okay. So we wouldn't want to just say, in this case, if 18% of the students are from Vernon with IEPs, you get 18% of 5 million. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't we want to do that? It's because, well, right off the top, not all students are actually being educated in that building. So there's outside placements, kids that are going to Dental Farm and Brattleboro Retreat. That's part of the 5 million using round numbers. And so if those kids are from Brattleboro Town or Dummerston, Vernon shouldn't be paying a percentage of that. That wouldn't make sense. And neither would Dover, and neither would Marlboro. So what we're doing here is we're taking total costs that we know are delivered. They're expenses to the SU, but we're saying what are shareable costs? What are proportionally used by Vernon kids, by all other kids, Dummerston, Putney, Brattleboro Town, and Guilford. So what are those major categories? It is the number 1 that's the easiest to isolate is the outside placement. It is a line item in the BUHS budget. And then to whatever extent there are costs that are being reimbursed by Marlboro and Dover, non-resident, non-member towns of the Union High School, we obviously don't want to put those into a pile to be shared.
So you're taking those out?
Those get
come
pulled out.
of the 5 million?
They get pulled
Okay.
out. And then finally, all of the state aid that comes to the SU for special education costs. They're not going to send the state aid to Vernon, they're not going to send it to Dover for costs that are incurred by the SU on behalf, they're going to send it to the SU. So obviously we want to take those revenues out, right? So then you're left with 5 million minus, traditionally it's been about half of the costs come back at state aid. So minus 2.5 million, minus maybe $1 million of outside placements. And now you've got a shared cost basis that says how much is this attributed to the 26 students or the 18% of Vernon kids, and then the balance goes to the SD, the Wyndham Southeast SD. Okay, so then that is step 4. Step 4 is just doing that simple calculation, which is you take your proportionate share and you multiply it times cost.
So what hit is Vernon going to take on this?
It's too early to tell. Unfortunately, we know the entire system is up substantially. At this point, Shelley and Marisa are still working with principals and with their team to refine the proposed budget, but based on that service plan that the Agency of Ed requires to be submitted by October 15th, it's the very early forecast. They were saying 15% increase on the, and it's largely students moving in with high needs and the system not able to accommodate them in the outside
Everybody's
placement.
hit, not just Vernon.
Not just
Oh,
Vernon,
yeah,
okay.
that's the whole
It
system.
wasn't like you were paying more.
Yeah.
We're all
Okay.
hit. We're all hit.
Right, I get that we are all hit by that. I'm worried whenever a new formula comes in,
Yep.
how it's,
Yeah, and it is a reason to be concerned when you now are a separate population of only 20 or 30 kids. 6 kids is a 20% change, and you can see how that can take a 20% cost impact. That is the problem of being small when you come to this state agency, state legislative funding formula, which is all about cost per student. So
how will 173 impact this? Because that would be a whole new ballgame, right? So
it will be,
we're
but
changing the formula now and it might get changed on us next year?
I don't see it changing the cost allocation. What I see is it changing the reimbursement.
Okay.
And ultimately it's cost minus reimbursement equals the assessment to the users, to the communities, right? So if they change the reimbursement, that obviously changes the net amount that gets assessed. If they increase the reimbursement, then the net amount that gets assessed goes down. If they reduce the reimbursement, the net amount that gets assessed goes up.
Okay.
Right, because it's cost minus revenue equals net cost times your proportion.
So the formula that applies to Vernon then also is what applies to Marlboro and Dover. Basically, you're paying your tuition rate, which is lower than
Lower than
but then
actual, yeah.
the SU has to, in this case, it's like they're wearing different hats for you, but the SU has to reimburse for those costs, and that's what would happen with Wyndham Central for those students. So it's
Right.
That's right.
so
This is a common model.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like this is the only one. And this methodology it still follows the state law in that it's using average daily membership to apportion costs, but it's being refined by the 2 groups, the K through 6 elementary with it, 7, 8, and a couple of, so we're still being consistent with, general practice.
Okay. And you don't have to go into this now, but I'll try to make myself a note. I'm curious when you come to Vernon and talk about our budget, how it works with Pioneer and all of that. Don't do it now because it doesn't matter here, so.
Yeah, but if I could say just one sentence, because it does affect this board as well. That's a if it's a secondary placement,
Yeah.
then it's a direct cost on the Vernon.
On Vernon, okay.
Yeah. If it's
okay.
an elementary, then it's in the SU.
Then it's.
And that would be
gotcha.
the same, they would affect
Okay.
everybody here.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so that's the big change. The next to the last block there from the bottom is the special ed, and now we're not into the school age, we're into the pre-K, which is essential early ed. It's also referred to triple E. So those expenditures have varied over the years, but as you may recall, and again, if you just kind of get your bearings in terms of context, it's about 600,000, between 600,000 and 700,000 has been that program cost historically. We're back to the standard mechanism there in that we generally, before, would drop the BUHS proportion because it was irrelevant. That's not, that those entities, the high school is not compatible with that grade level. Pre-K costs are in the elementary budgets, and that's where the triple E special ed pre-K costs would belong, has belonged, and again, it's just a proportional.
So no change there.
No change other than we're not looking at K-12, we're looking at K-6.
Right.
Okay. And then transportation, again, no change.
Okay.
I've added a little bit more narrative because we had gone from this older methodology from first student to Kosmuskas, so we changed vendors, and they changed to some extent the cost structure, the way they define costs to us, but it's very straightforward. They bid a 5-year bid, and based on the routes that we asked them to bid on, they said it'll take 17 buses for to and from school regular ed, and 3 of those need to be dedicated to Vernon. So it'll be 17 divided by cost times 3 for Vernon and times 14 for the SD. Special ed transportation, it is more, it's very customized, so it's going to be a reflection of utilization. Sometimes that's a Kosmuskas bus with 6 kids on it or 5 kids. It depends on what kids are on the bus and what town IEP is required to get that service. So, but that's no change. So that is the recommendation for the assessment methodology for fiscal year 21.
Questions?
On the administrative services and supportive instruction, that first item, given that you're administering the WSESD and Vernon separate districts, do you feel that there are a large number of costs? I mean, I know like auditing might be one cost, but do you feel like there's a large number of costs having 2 districts that we should consider, and maybe not for this go round, but as we're sort of figuring it out, and you don't really have a lot of experience because we haven't even gone through a year, realizing, hey, people ask me those questions, I shouldn't ask you those questions. But I think I'm just throwing it on the table to say, is there a need to have a slightly different allocation in that line item because the cost of administering the separate district might be slightly higher?
You were referring to auditing specifically?
Or your time spent preparing for an audit for them and things like that, because you're, so it's a per pupil thing, so I would suspect it might be slightly easier to do the 5 merged districts, 1 audit for them versus the 5 previous
Can't imagine
districts.
that's easy, but okay.
Well, neither is good, neither is easy, but, and so I think with the VSBA dues, there was a certain, every superintendency is gonna have a certain number of questions, and the questions are gonna be greater based on the number of students. So the formula that they came up with was a 50-50 weighting, they divided half of the cost of administering the VSBA to an entity. And I'm not suggesting this is our allocation, that would seem bizarre to me, and then half it was based on the number of students that they had, because the more students you have, the more things that will happen and the more questions. So that was kind of there. So I'm just thinking down the road, would that be a good application? And it's probably not a good year to do it because you don't know.
Yeah, in general, what we're saying is, again, for administrative services, which includes the instruction, 2.6 million, audit is in there, and it's now the proportionate of total enrollment. So there is no sub-analysis of components of costs. I think that's what you're saying. Maybe we want to look at, but
Not now.
yeah, but I think we need at least a year or two.
Okay.
Yeah. The default in the statute for all SU costs is a proportion of ADM, and that is what we're using.
Okay.
But it does say that the SU board can, if you agree, you can come up with a different allocation method. Generally, it has to comply with the the other laws, and the biggest one is tuition. Even though most of our impact is special ed, because school districts like BUHS, well, we all did set tuition rates. Putney would have a number of tuition students. Dummerston had some. BUHS would have over $2 million worth of tuition students. But the point is that it has to be a regular ed tuition rate. So to get to that number, you've got to understand your special ed costs. And when you're in your special ed cost allocation methodology, that affects the regular ed tuition. So it is all absolutely connected. Mm-hmm. So that just means when you're doing your allocation methodology, you got to be aware that you don't want to create a situation where you inadvertently run a profit in the regular ed tuition, because the state law says 3 years later you will refund it back to that district you charged too much for. Mm-hmm. And that creates a lot of problems with future budgets, and tax rates.
I was not looking at
Yeah.
I was just thinking about kind of your time. So.
Yeah.
Other questions? We can go right to the quiz.
So what we would do then is for the meeting on Monday, the 2nd, we would apply these assumptions to that budget, and it would be, obviously the special ed budget is the one that will have the greatest impact.
Okay.
Unfortunately, on December, December 2nd,
Mm-hmm.
we will not have the AOE statistics, which are, absolutely central. So what I typically do in these pre-meeting drafts before the December 11 is I just use the prior year, because I don't know what the new data is.
Well, would you even have them on the 11th? Not until the
we
15th? And...
Yeah, we may have draft numbers, but again, if I don't have them, boards vote on expenditures.
Okay.
You're not voting
We're not
on
voting
the
on-
revenue.
Okay.
And we can revise the revenue when the numbers do come in.
Well, Frank, does the special ed service plan, does that drive what's in the budget, the expenditures budget? So
It helps inform,
Right.
but Shelley and Marisa, Lyle, myself, we do a lot of refining that analysis. And in typical fashion, it is the time of year where a lot of families come and go. So it's a big difference between October 15 and December 1st or so.
So if we see any numbers next week, they'll be last year's.
I think, in terms of just the enrollment statistics, they'll be last year's, but the spending will be the forward-looking numbers.
So if there are significant changes, we'll be able to see those?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. That's what I was wondering about,
Yeah.
where are we headed?
Yeah.
Where are we investing?
We also hope to have the health commission's, at least the public version of the 2 requests by December 1st, and then there's supposedly we all get by December 15 the arbitrator's decision on the path ahead. So you can see that's not great timing for a December 11th vote. But I will update you with what the VHI has given us with what they believe the rates will be for next year. And then we'll just have to see what the Health Commission does to the real cost of that expense to the employer. You may recall the SU board and the SD board approved a tentative agreement with the union to extend health benefits through December of 2020. So we'll proceed with those assumptions in this budget as if it was a 12-month, and then we'll see. We don't know if that's going to be close or not, but it's best information we have at this point. So the last thing I had was Paul had a chance to look at the grant budget a little more closely, and it's also a similar scenario where we get revisions from the state. So I was just going to turn it over to Paul for just a kind of a quick update.
Did we get this last time?
Yes, so this
Okay, so
is,
there's a new one?
so this
This is revised.
So this is the new grants budget?
yeah, and I have a couple more folks need it.
We could use one more for.
Yep. And this would be typical where Paul will get updates from the Agency of Ed about new allocations. And those aren't final until, it's not until next July, right? June, July, that they're
Right.
final?
Right,
Well,
well,
that's helpful.
yeah.
Maybe one last thing about that, just related to that, is it is why, if you look back at your historical documents, like this thing, this summary, you will not see the same number that's on these grants, because you may remember I mentioned, we are required to amend them. So I can always show you how we got from here to there, but I have to show you what has been
But
approved.
that's this, right?
And that's
So
part
that's
of
how
that.
it's-
It's part of that, yeah. Paul, you want to give us?
Sure. So, on the first page, first of all, make sure we're looking WSESU FY20 regular ed grant program revenue and expenditure detail. So on page 1, as I said last time, the grants I generally deal with are Title I, what are called the Consolidated Federal Programs grants, Title I, Title IIA, Title IV. And the first of those is on about the middle, slightly lower than the middle of page 1. You'll see that revenues anticipated are up about 7%, and that's a combination of increased allocation from the state and some anticipated carryover. Okay?
And if I could just say, the first 2 pages are revenues. You didn't have that last meeting.
Okay.
And that's why they're in the credits. So the first 2 pages are revenues, and you'll see total revenues actually on the very top of page 3.
Gotcha, okay.
So immediately below that, you'll see a larger increase, almost 13%. Again, that's anticipated larger allocations to the SU. This is a relatively new grant program, and I'm still seeing additional revenues granted to the district for these activities. And then there's skip 1, 21st century schools. Below that, the 2A is down slightly again based on anticipated allocations. Okay, so that's a change from prior year. The percentage change is from prior year budget. And then I've annotated my copy, but it might not be the same. It should be the same. If you skip forward a few pages, I talked about page 4, talked about this last time. We're moving a fair chunk of some of the allocations to individual schools to a school-wide. In the past, we've separated out a number. You'll see at the top near the top of page 4, subgrants to Academy, Guilford, Oak, Green, BAMS. Those are all now loaded into. It's a few lines down. Subgrant to WSESD, right? You'll see that there are zeros to the right of all those school subgrants and zeros to the left of all of the SD subgrants. And that includes not only the anticipated grants from, mostly it's for academic support teachers that are providing the kind of on-the-ground support for students who are struggling. We've also added in some internship, some support that we're doing with a collaboration with Antioch, and we've got some tutors built into that as well at the SU level. Okay. Question?
What are the Title I stipends? What's that?
Title I stipends is, I've got a reference on that. That is the interns that we've added in. And as I say, those were in the school-wide sub-grants. They're actually outside of that.
And I think we're hoping that they become future teachers, is that?
Yeah, this is a great program. Deb can talk a little bit more about what we're doing with those folks.
Sure, I mean, this is its third year, and we've got, at this point, at least 2 interns from last year hired, and teachers, current teachers this year, first-year teachers in our district.
Right, so these are folks that were in the Antioch program that we hired as tutors to provide academic support,
So they're simultaneously doing part-time tutoring positions and then also fulfilling their internship requirements. So they're essentially in the classrooms full-time across the
And then a couple of those have now become teachers, were hired as full-time teachers this year.
It's a little bit off topic, but I wonder if Deb could be part of that. The Franklin Pierce visit, if she could talk about that program with those kids. These are students of color coming from Franklin Pierce to Brattleboro to just kind of explore Brattleboro, and that would be an attractive. Getting paid part of the cost of an internship would be.
So you and I should. We'll check it.
Thank you.
So continue on page 4, slightly going the other way, we've moved some stipends that were at the SU level for the academic support camp during the summer to school-wide, simply because by and large we're hiring school teachers to do that, and it's much clearer accounting-wise to be paying them out of the district that they're employed in. What other markers do I have? Not huge changes. Let's see. So the bottom line, as noted for Title I, that's on page 6, is up batch 7%. Minor shifts otherwise.
And keep in mind, at this point, I don't think we have the salary increases in, right?
Right.
Yep.
Could I just back up? I'm still not sure what I'm looking at. The first 2 pages are revenues?
Revenues, yeah.
Okay, right to the bottom of page 2?
And then you see on the very top of page 3, you see the total revenue.
I haven't, yeah.
Yeah, 2,802,000.
Oh, right at the top of.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that 2,802,000, if you went all the way to the back page, you'd see that number.
Thank you. I didn't see that. It's,
Yeah.
tucked away on top there. Great, thanks. So then we're looking at technical admin, project admin, safety grant, and then it becomes substance abuse, and then it becomes Title I.
Yes.
Okay, good.
The other program that we talked about briefly in the grants that we took another look at is the social justice, and we had brought in essentially a duplicate assumption there that just because of the way it was coded in the system.
Okay.
So there was an increase. It's on page 13, but it wasn't double like we had. So page 13, the program consultant there, where on the left it starts at a $10,000 number, 11, and then 12, 14. So we've reviewed that. The social competency and the diversity training that is done is a little more refined.
So it's up 3 instead of 18?
Yes. And that's, what's her name?
Diana Wall.
Diana Wally. Anything else, Paul?
If there are questions, it's sort of adjustments, for instance, on page 6, in the 2A section that's below where it says Title I grants about halfway down, a large increase in general supplies. That the percentage increase is actually very similar. The FY21 is very similar to the FY19. We didn't have some funds allocated for additional support materials that we are going to spend, and we're anticipating spending them again next year. So it's more like the question might be in the FY20 interim budget column rather than in the FY19 or FY21 budgeted. And again, these are grants, so as money comes in, we spend that money. We don't go over or under that budget. Okay? Other questions?
Is Title I audited every couple of years?
It is, yeah, every year, yeah. It's part of that, they call it the Single Audit Act, and if a system receives more than, I think it's 750,000, then the CPA is required to do a single audit review, and that's a much more thorough analysis of, did we comply with the requirements of the grant?
But it looks like we didn't have it last year in our budget?
Right.
Or in the FY19 actual. So page 5.
We had the money, but we didn't spend it in FY19?
Yeah, we didn't allocate it, and so we incur an expense, and that's in the administrative budget, and if we can allocate a portion to the grant as part of an indirect cost, which is absolutely allowed, we do, but in certain circumstances we can't fit it into the grant, so that does happen from time to time.
And they're fine with that?
Yeah, the state always wants to see the money going to program development, so
versus
they're happy to have us not allocate.
No.
They're probably more happy.
That's true.
But it doesn't matter.
It comes on our taxpayers.
The work is still done.
Okay.
It's not optional. It's the state
We
requirement.
have to do it. We hope we can pay for it out
Out
of this, but if we
buckets.
can't, we're still on the hook for it.
Yes.
Okay.
And the next pages 6 and 7, that's the Title IV, that the ends in the 4570, and then the rest of that is cut off. That's all the Title IV, and you'll see some increases there, but that's because we're expecting increased revenue. Those programs are well-rounded. The goals for Title IV are well-rounded education, safe and healthy schools, and technology integration. And we've found good things to do with that money, with that additional allocation that we have.
And that's a relatively new grant, right, Paul? This 200,000 is within the last 4 years, so it's new money.
Yeah.
So.
Can you give us some highlights about what that looks like?
Sure. One of the big expenses that we're sort of working on right now is supplying science units, science instructional kits to teachers across K-8. It's through a program from the Lawrence Hall of Science, which I don't know whether you ever ran into the GEMS curriculum way back. They have done just some fabulous stuff, and it's extremely well integrated with online resource support. We're finding, in fact, there's one of the kits is sitting ready to be distributed.
I was looking at it.
Yeah, ready to be distributed. Yeah,
Keep an eye on it tonight when she leaves.
Yeah, it's supposed to go to Vernon, so.
Not the teacher's manual, I love the teacher's manual.
Right.
Well chosen one to present to me, Paul.
Other questions?
And what happened to Title II? And what is Title II?
Title II is professional development, okay? So between...
Is it targeted at any particular student, like 4 is lower income, or 4 is students that are behind?
No, so
One is
Title I is for students who are struggling academically. The payment is based on, for free and reduced, right?
Yeah.
But once the payment happens, right, then you have one of two choices. Either you are a targeted assistance school, in which case you identify a list of students who become Title I students and they are provided support for the entire year. Or the other case, which is true of all of the WSESU schools that are Title I schools, we are school-wide program schools, and that is any student, all students are eligible for that support. It provides much more flexibility. Students can go in and out of academic support on an as-needed basis rather than being identified for the entire year. So much more flexibility, much more responsiveness to the needs of students. And an added benefit of school-wide program schools is you can consolidate funds.
And Title II is just blanket professional.
Title II is really designed for improving instruction through professional development, teachers and administrators. So really, we think about it as Title I is really frontline teachers working with students. Title IIA is supporting teachers to implement best practices. And Title IV is for that well-rounded piece. We're right now using it for, as I said, technology integration, buying materials, supporting social studies, curriculum work groups, that sort of thing.
So the professional development that we see in the line items previously in district budgets, that's separate from this.
In addition, yeah.
In addition.
This is in addition,
Mhm.
okay.
And could any of that be in this?
Well, we can't subgrade, or
Well-
supplant, I mean, but you want to speak to that?
Sure, there are things, and the way most often the way I think about it is, there are professional development activities that we want to provide on an SU level, right? Sometimes that professional development is for a specific curriculum area, and we'll pull teachers from a specific grade span. And we'll pull teachers together, say, to do some work on the social studies curriculum and provide a stipend for that, right? Or the science curriculum. In some cases, there's a district-wide initiative like differentiation, where we want to provide someone to come in to do SU-wide professional development, right? Conversely, schools may have some specific interest in a professional development activity that's really focused on their work in their school. And I think more often you're going to find that in those budgets than you are the sort of the more SU level stuff.
The other area that I know Brattleboro Town in particular had heard a lot about the impact on student growth. Isn't this where Mr. Rittner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A big chunk of Title IIA is coaching support,
Yeah.
right?
So-
A piece of Brian, all of Team Reed is provided there.
Yeah, so so it's a fair amount of direct service, and I don't know how much the other board members have seen the Brattleboro Town presentations. I don't recall, Lila, how broadly those were. Probably
Just us.
But mostly it
yeah,
was.
but really a remarkable impact about how the student growth over all kinds of different challenges and over many years.
When we get done with all this, we can have.
Were these the ones you guys did at the pre-town meeting?
Yes.
That's an example.
That's an example
Yeah.
of, okay.
We had the English language learners people come in. We had the behaviorists. We had Shelley come in one time.
Brian had come in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's just, aside from helping us understand things, it wows the community with how competent these people are, how expert these people are.
So that's largely funded by the Title IIA, and the stability of that has just had a tremendous impact over time. Other questions on our grants? They really are a very, very valuable resource. The 2.8 million is it's highly regulated, highly accountable. In terms of Paul develops strategies that identify student learning goals that will be addressed and outcomes to be accomplished. And then the oversight is all about them monitoring, okay, we gave you 2.8 million, show us that strategy and how did you do, and let's look at the data. So it's a very rigorous type of resource to manage, because if we don't follow the rules, they will come in and say, you have to give us the money back. That doesn't happen.
And I was gonna say, I'm assuming that does not happen.
It happens frequently across the state, but it has
But it
not
does not
happened.
happen to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions on this? So what's next, I guess is, I always like to know, what
Yep.
can we do to be better prepared for
So our next
The
two
next
meetings. Yeah, our next two meetings, I'm going to be working with Lyle and Shelley and Marisa very diligently through right up to the holiday, and I do hope to send you the special ed draft budget before the holiday, just so we don't have to work on it during the holiday, because
Okay.
it's a Monday meeting.
Okay,
So that's my goal. I'm not sure if we'll make it, but we'll try.
okay,
Get you a draft special ed budget. We will have some updated figures for the food service as well. You saw that last week. We'll have some refined numbers there. So we'll send you everything that we have, and the draft that you receive will be, certainly the focus is special education, but it will probably be the whole budget.
okay.
So you'll start to get a sense of what we look like. I forewarn you, it's gonna be a big spending proposal increase because of the need, primarily in special ed.
Okay.
And then the 11th, between the 2nd, us having the discussion that we're having now, any questions you might have, we'll bring back the best estimate we can come up with for the 11th, including the enrollment statistics if they're available. And then that's the budget process for the SU. That's the typical cycle.
Okay. So our next meeting is for budget, next Monday, December 2nd, 5:30, and we're here again?
Here.
Okay.
And it's the special ed budget.
And it's special ed, so check your email if I, and I'm fine if you guys want to send it directly to everybody, that way I'm not holding it up if I don't happen to look at my email until 4 o'clock and go, oops.
And I'll probably forward it to Barb, just so you're not
Okay.
getting email from a bunch, you know,
Okay.
generally I
That's
try to have Barb be the
perfectly good.
distributor.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that 15% up? Is that 15% up revenue minus expenditure or just expenditure?
Expenditure.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay,
Yeah, I hope it's better.
It sort of occurred to me, that's what I thought you meant, but then I just
Yeah.
thought I should,
Hoping
before
that-
I wake up in the middle of the night worrying about that.
Yeah, we're hoping the net impact is less.
All right, so just so we're all on the same page, right now, okay, we're gonna make it through this week. Next Monday, 5:30 here, special ed budget. Thursday, December 5th, 3:30, to be determined where, our exploratory committee,
SSEC.
SSEC, kicks off. Is there any reason that either well, I guess it would be me. Is there any reason for me not to email principals and say welcome?
I would appreciate it if you did, and I think
Okay.
they would as well.
Okay, does anyone, I mean, is that okay with people if I just sort of put it out there to, can I be town crier running around going?
I think the more it feels like that, the better. Because
Okay.
we really are like, sort of feeling our way through this, but we
Yes.
do have excellent models for how to hire
Yeah.
administrators.
Yeah, and
So, but we just need to get clear about how we're gonna do it.
And probably some admin people at the SU level would
Okay,
be important as well. If we're gonna do this.
Do this?
Now.
Okay.
They'd be another important.
yeah. Okay, well, you and I are gonna talk agenda, so you can
Okay.
help me with.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, just wanna make sure the board is happy with me cheerleading through town. Get my baton out.
I look forward to seeing that.
Don't say I want video.
Okay, so for the next agenda, the focus will be on special ed and budget. We will probably have an update, no, we won't have any update on the, because we won't have met yet, on the superintendent search. That'll really come later. VSBA dues we will do later. I think I would like, if it's okay, I think we've got time for the next on the 2nd. If there's any warrants, I'd like to kind of do warrants and keep up with them, so we're not doing
That's fine.
$8 million worth of stuff. I know there's one we didn't get to
Correct.
that I had
Yep.
post last meeting.
We didn't get one in the last week or so, did we?
No, we did not. We got one almost the day of.
We got triple E.
Yeah, so there's one, but I would
Oh,
almost
that's
expect that another one's gonna come. So if you guys don't mind trying to keep up with those right now, I would
Sounds good.
much rather not have a huge massive stack. All right, anything else?
One other.
Yep.
Have we set a date and time for the 12/11 meeting?
We have not, other than.
Just
Oh,
because
no,
maybe we
budget.
want to get that warned and taken care of, since you're having Barb warn that Thursday meeting, maybe have her do both.
I mean, what is everybody's pleasure? So that's a Wednesday. Does that mess you guys up?
My daughter has a concert, so you can plan it for any time. 'Cause I'll miss that one.
Okay.
I mean, 5:30 seems to work for people mostly, so.
Yeah.
Do you work?
People good with 5:30 here? Okay. Okay.
We're gonna see if Emily can come. Just get added to the confusion.
Yeah. Hey, we worked through it.
It's kind of amazing, really.
So the other item that I wanted to add, again, this is just such a busy time of year for most of us, and data is kind of slow coming, but obviously we need to make an assumption for negotiations.
Okay.
And it would be timely if we made an assumption on December 2nd.
Okay.
So that I can bring that to the full board, on the December 11th document.
So we would need an executive session
Yeah.
for budget assumptions?
Yeah,
Okay,
related to negotiations.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, can do.
Next is.
Okay, so everybody clear when we're back here next Monday,
December 2nd.
5:30?
Same batch,
All right. And I know you're not technically, but it's your line.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I just remembered, Christina, you asked a question on food service about Putney.
Oh, revenues, yeah.
Yeah, and Putney, because it was a totally different model, it's coming back to the historical norm of about 170,000 spending. The budget said something like
230.
Yeah. And
239.
And what it was is the old model of SU gets money and then sub-grants money back to the other entity had been left in.
Okay.
So that came out, and that brings us back to about the 170 historical norm. So just wanted to mention that. And those are the kinds of things you'll see when I send out all of the documents.
Okay.
Okay. No, and if, as you're going through all these budgets, if there's any questions you've got, feel free, send them my way. We can tip off Frank and see if we can get answers. All right.
Thanks, Steph.
All right, you pretend to be Anne.
Go ahead.
There being no further business before this body, Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
7:12 p.m.
All right, thank you guys, thank you all.
Thank you.
Can I make it home by 8? My husband was laughing.